In 1987, the world was introduced to a new breed of antagonist. An otherworldly hunter that spawned a franchise that evolved into mass media, and to this day continues to be influential to many creators. What was originally expected to be a B-movie creature feature excelled at the box office and became one of the most iconic and praised horror movies of all time. So how did this all happen? Well, sit back and relax and discover everything you ever wanted to know about Predator. In September of 1983, brothers Jim and John Thomas wrote a screenplay about a platoon that would face a new breed of enemy. The story was inspired by dark fairy tales and mythical legends. The brothers Grimm and Beowulf would contribute to their story. They explored what it would be like to be preyed upon by an unstoppable hunter. The Thomas brothers would find inspiration from the 1899 novel The Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. The story tells of a team of explorers in Africa who were stalked upon by the local tribes. Setting their story in the jungle, the brothers aimed for a more threatening antagonist. Wanting to create their own creature, they designed what they thought would make the perfect hunter. The hunter would be proficient at stalking, mimicking calls of prey and camouflage. To make this creature more effective, they chose to make it alien in species, something that no man had experience in combating. In the original concept, the hunter would be a red scaly humanoid with the ability to shapeshift into any species it comes into contact with, all except humans. It would kill with curiosity and attempt to study and understand human anatomy. In the final draft, the hunter would be changed to a trophy collector that hunted for sport. When completed, the script was sent to John Davies, who instantly saw the potential of a movie. He forwarded the script to Michael Levy at Fox, who greenlit the project. The script was then purchased by Larry Gordon. Impressed by the low-budget movie Nomads, he hired John McTiernan to direct and Joel Silver to produce. Silver had previously worked on the movie Commando and was a personal friend of Arnold Schwarzenegger. After a string of successful movies, Schwarzenegger was one of the biggest names in Hollywood. Although the script described the main character as an everyday man, Silver was eager and secured Schwarzenegger for the role. Predator would be John McTiernan's feature debut. Casting was done collectively by Jackie Birch and Joel Silver. Birch wanted actors with a military past, preferably ones who had served in the Vietnamese War. Richard Chavez was a theatrical actor who had previously served in the 101st Airborne. Former Navy SEAL and ex-WWF wrestler Jesse the Body Ventura was recommended by agent Barry Bloom. Despite his lack of acting ability, Ventura was cast for his physique and eagerness. Carl Weathers was recommended by McTiernan to complement Schwarzenegger's performance, having an experienced actor and athlete to work alongside. Bill Duke was a personal friend of Schwarzenegger. Having starred together in 84's Commando, Duke was well experienced with working in the action genre. Impressed by his role in The Warriors, Sonny Landon was cast to create an ethnic balance. Due to his unpredictable nature, the insurance company would not allow Landon to work unless they hired a bodyguard, not to protect him, but to protect other people from him. In a heated argument, Landon tried to throw the 6-foot-tall bodyguard from a hotel balcony, to which the bodyguard promptly quit the job. Upon the realization it was an all-male cast, El Padilla Carollo was cast for a competent acting ability and to add a little glamour to the picture. Still feeling the script needed refining, Shane Black was initially hired as an actor in hopes of him redrafting the script on the set. Having previously written the blockbuster Lethal Weapon, Silver knew having Black on board would be a great asset. With the cast and crew assembled, Fox gave the movie a budget of $15 million and a deadline for summer 1987. Shot on location in the jungles of Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, filming began on April 14, 1986. During principal photography, it was noticed that the best scenery was located on the hilltops, but due to the high temperatures and altitude, it would be impractical to film and dangerous to the actors. Upon viewing the valleys, it was noticeably cooler, but lacked any deep scenery. To compromise, the majority of the movie would be filmed on the hillsides. benefiting both on the lavish scenery and temperature. This became very uncomfortable for the cast and crew, as there was no even ground to rest upon. As Puerto Vallarta was experiencing a dry season, certain shots were filmed in the valleys. This was done to provide a claustrophobic feel to many of the scenes. In typical fashion, platoons would wear matching uniforms. To give the characters more identity, they were dressed with different headwear and given individual weapons and face paint to reflect their personas. Most notably was Blaine's M134 minigun, which the props department named Old Painless, implying that a victim of the weapon would be dead before they felt the impact. The gun itself was taken from a combat helicopter and redesigned to be handheld. At a firing rate of 400 rounds per minute and almost 7 rounds per second, Painless required over 100 pounds in batteries to spin the barrel, which had to be slowed down to 1/3 speed just to be seen on camera. What made the gun most impractical was that the maximum weight Ventura could carry equaled a single 5-second burst that would spend the entire payload and take several hours to reset. Interestingly, Painless would be used by Arnold Schwarzenegger 4 years later in James Cameron's Terminator 2: Judgment Day. McTiernan wanted the cast to have a natural camaraderie and a full understanding of silent hand signals and communication. He hired a military trainer, Gary Goldman, who put the cast through 8 weeks of boot camp. The training did indeed bring the actors together as a unit, which many of the cast agree brought a sense of reality to the platoon. The cast were often in competition with each other, Jesse Ventura in particular. As a fellow bodybuilder, Ventura challenged Schwarzenegger on who had the biggest arms, the winner receiving a bottle of champagne. After being measured by the costume department, Ventura found a bottle of champagne in his hotel room. Upon bragging to the rest of the cast, it was revealed by Schwarzenegger that he had the costume department lie about the results. On location, it was discovered that the trees were relatively small. To give the jungle a more grandeur appearance, the props department fashioned several giant felled trees which appear at several different locations throughout the movie. The original Predator arrived on set to much disappointment. Jokingly referred to as the Red Lobster, the original Predator design was deemed inappropriate. McTiernan did shoot several test shots with the costume, worn by the unknown stuntman, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Fresh in Hollywood, Van Damme was known as a proficient martial artist and athlete. Hoping to break into movies, he too was concerned about the Predator suit, as it covered his face. Although test footage still exists, the original design was dropped. It was at this point the production ran out of money and filming stopped. While trying to find more money, the crew were able to assemble a rough cut of the movie. This gave them the opportunity to quality control the movie. Through the recommendation of Schwarzenegger, the rough cut was sent to Stan Winston, who had previously worked with Arnold on the Terminator. During that time, Winston was in Japan promoting the movie Aliens alongside director James Cameron. The design of the new Predator was based from a Rastafarian warrior. When sketching ideas, it was James Cameron that suggested that the creature have mandibles. Through Cameron and Winston, Kevin Peter Hall was recommended to play the character. At the time, he was playing Bigfoot in the family comedy Harry and the Hendersons. With costume experience and at 7'2" tall, Hall was the perfect candidate. The new costume weighed a reported 200 pounds and would also blind Hall. To get around this, the Predator had to be rigged with a bungee cord to lighten the load. This also gave the Predator a much more fluid movement and looked more believable on camera. Through Larry Gordon, an extra $3 million funding was found and filming resumed, this time with Kevin Peter Hall as a main cast member. Inspired by Jaws to slowly reveal the monster throughout the duration of the movie, the final payoff being what was underneath the helmet. This led to the inclusion of the Predator POV. To make the character appear more alien, a thermographic heat vision camera was used. The camera had to be kept in a nitrogen-cooled truck for it to work. To achieve the aerial POV shots, the entire truck had to be lifted into the tree line by a crane. There was another issue as the local temperature made the actors thermally invisible to the camera. To make the heat signatures more prominent, actors were required to stand by fires as truckloads of ice water were pumped onto the set. In the script, the Predator was often referred to as a hole in the jungle. To create the camouflage effect, the costume was wrapped in red material as it would contrast against the green of the jungle. These scenes would then be refilmed without the Predator in shot. The original footage was layered on top with the color red keyed out. This process was repeated multiple times to create the now iconic camouflage effect. In early tests, McTiernan experimented by putting the red suit on a monkey. However, the method failed as the monkey became embarrassed and wouldn't perform in the suit. Many of the growls and snarls were provided by the sound department, but to voice the Predator, veteran voice actor Peter Cullen was hired. Although only saying very few words, it was Cullen that suggested the clicking voice. Believing the character to be a shelled creature, he imagined the voice to be that of a humanoid crab. In the third act of the movie, Dutch was to be covered in mud as to become thermally invisible. The mud was actually potter's clay. As the temperatures dropped so low at night, Schwarzenegger would shiver. To help the problem, heat lamps were used but ultimately dried out the clay. Another solution was to allow him to drink Jaeger tea to warm him up. This idea was also dropped as Schwarzenegger became drunk and was unable to perform. Being the athlete he is, he finished the scene without any aid. Disappointingly, in 2006, Discovery show Mythbusters proved that using cold mud would not actually hide body heat from a thermal scanner. The movie was originally entitled Hunter. The name was changed to Predator to avoid confusion with the series in 1984. The opening sequence was created by DreamQuest Images. Having worked on the space scenes in E.T. and Daryl, Silver knew that they would be perfect for the job. For the final touch of the movie, Silver employed Alan Silvestri. Impressed by his scores for Back to the Future and Flight of the Navigator, Silvestri's score featured low-frequency drones and aggressive horn stabs to imitate the suspense and approach and strike of an actual hunt. Silvestri also wrote a somber piece to reflect the horror and heartbreak of war. The piece entitled Goodbye became known by the crew as fanfare for the common mercenary. On March 31st, 1986, Mexicana Flight 940 crashed into the El Carbon Mountain. The flight carried location manager Federico Yasuzna and art director Augustin Yatuari. The movie Predator is dedicated to their memory. Demented Pictures is assisted by Patreon support. If you want to help the show, keep watching after the credits for contact details. June 12, 1987, saw the premiere of Predator. Opening nationwide in 1,623 theaters, the movie earned $12 million in its opening weekend, the second highest grossing weekend of 1987, behind Beverly Hills Cop 2. The movie would go on to become the 12th highest grossing movie of 1987. The reviews of Predator were mediocre, accusing the movie of being a typical muscle and monster movie. Many reviewers criticized the picture as a clone of Rambo First Blood Part 2 and James Cameron's Aliens. Roger Ebert was one of the first to defend the movie. Commenting on the professionalism and quality of the production, Ebert stated that the movie is indeed inspired by other action movies, but does not try to be anything but an action horror movie and delivers what it promises. In the wake of its release, Predator's fan base began to grow. Today, Entertainment Weekly rate the movie as the 22nd greatest action movie of all time. IGN rate the movie as the 13th, and Empire Magazine rate the movie as the 336th greatest movie of all time. Among several nominations, the movie received a Saturn Award for Best Music and also received an Oscar nomination for Best Visual Effects. Following the success of Predator, the movie's location, El Eden, became a tourist attraction. Many of the props still remain, and in the years that followed, El Eden has added a Predator museum, barbecue restaurant, activity pool, canopy tours, and is an adventure sports resort. To date, Predator has grossed almost $100 million. "1991 would see a direct sequel. Predator 2 sees Kevin Peter Hall return as another hunter. Set in New York and starring Danny Glover, Predator 2 received average reviews. After being hinted in Predator 2, Alien vs. Predator was released in 2004. Hosting many well-executed action scenes, the movie pandered to a PG-13 audience and disappointed many fans. AVP2 Requiem was released in 2007. No longer restricted by a PG rating, Requiem suffered from poor writing and bad direction and is considered a low point for both franchises. After 19 years, in 2010, Predator would receive a canon sequel with Predators, an average movie which is seen more as a remake by many fans. 2018 sees the return of Shane Black with The Predator. This time as writer and director, this sequel further explores the Predator mythology. There's been a myriad of Predator-related games since its release, but only 2 based on the original movie. 1987 saw Predator for Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum, and Commodore Amiga, a side-scrolling shooter with very little depth. In 1988 for the Acorn Electron, Atari ST, BBC Micro, MSX, and the Nintendo Entertainment System, Predator was also a side-scrolling shooter. Despite hosting high-quality graphics, the game suffered from inconsistent and monotonous gameplay. The Predator would also appear as a combatant in NetherRealm Studios' Mortal Kombat 10. In 1989, Dark Horse Comics released Predator: Concrete Jungle, an adaptation of the movie that would bridge the gap to Predator 2. Dark Horse would continue with several comic book series following original storylines. The Predator would also appear in many crossover stories. 30 years have passed since the creation of Predator. What originally began life as a sci-fi horror movie has evolved into a media dynasty. The Predator has become one of the most iconic villains of all time and a staple name in the world of horror. With Shane Black helming the return of the franchise in 2018, this is one hunter that will never stop. Be sure to like and share the video, and please consider subscribing for more. To follow Demented Pictures on social media, check the description box below. Also, if you want to help the show develop, please consider supporting the show through Patreon. You'll get behind-the-scenes updates and an opportunity to choose the next movie covered in the show. This is Mike from Demented Pictures. Thank you for watching.